Everyone, thank you so much. Number one, for joining us today. Number two, we have a special guest with us, Knox County Sheriff Tom Spangler. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
We're talking about a really important issue, and it just came to light this week. It was Monday. President Trump signed an executive order to end what he calls cashless bail in Washington, D.C., and here's the caveat: to withhold federal funds from other jurisdictions using similar policies. Let's kick things off. First of all, for those of you who don't know what this is, let's talk about what cashless bail is. And you don't like that term.
It's kind of an oxymoron. That it kind of to me, it means you're paying with a credit card versus
some people
the
may think that
old-fashioned way with cash and chickens and produce here in East Tennessee to your bondsman. Basically, there are two ways. You start with the premise under the U.S. Constitution and Tennessee Constitution. This is something that's forgotten. There is no constitutional requirement for a bond in every case or bail. There is, however, a requirement for a reasonable bond or bail.
you have that right.
You have the right, but then there are two ways you can do it. You can pay a bondsperson who acts as surety for your bond. Let's say it's $100,000. You typically pay them 10 to 12%, and that money you don't get back. They keep that money by bearing the risk. If you don't show up for court, they've got to come find you, a la Dog the Bounty Hunter. The other parallel form of release is where people like Sheriff Spangler come in. It is pretrial release, and instead of having to report under the guise of a bondsman wanting to protect their investment, you have law enforcement people that they have to report to, they being pretrial citizens accused. They have to follow the rules, curfews, GPS, and what it does is shifts or allocates all the risk to law enforcement versus the private sector, and it is something that can, and Sheriff Spangler can address this, be very difficult to police.
Yeah, so let's ask you. I was watching your face here. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
The cashless bail, I think we've got to have something, but when I go in there, or at least our agency, when people come in, if they're put on pretrial, that just puts more numbers. And as we were talking earlier, I have over 2,000 people that are on pretrial right now, and right at 190 of those people right now we have on monitors, so we have to continue to monitor those individuals with 4 people that are watching all of those.
You're monitoring them. What about the other hundreds and hundreds? That's got to be so difficult. How do you keep up with all that?
Well, it's we have a good staff that takes care of that, but obviously, it makes it tough. And I think when you say, I'm going to promise to show up if you don't put a bond on me, then there again, you're making a promise to somebody that may be a habitual offender, and then here we go again. That's just over and over again. I think there was a video or an audio the other day about an individual saying that, I've been arrested so many times for this, and they're just going to let me out. So, those are some of the issues that we have to deal with.
And this is where risk assessment comes in, and that's an important part of this.
And it does. And here's how typically under Tennessee law, magistrates are taxed with setting a bond. Now, the way it works now, and if I say something wrong, I'm sure Sheriff Spangler will stop me.
Yes, I will.
as he has in the past.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Typically, when you're arrested, you wait for a magistrate to set your bond. And I think the way we're doing it now is every 4 hours, magistrates try to have hearings, and that's a whole another issue, to tailor the bond to the specific person, their record, the charges. But under Tennessee law, it's a very broad, commonsensical standard to get a bond in determining the amount and whether it's going to be granted. Now, everybody has a right to bond under State versus Bergen, the leading Tennessee case, but they look at things like the severity of the charge. They look at likelihood of conviction. They look at whether you have a prior record, whether you have ties to the community, whether you have a history of drug or alcohol abuse, whether you have maintained gainful employment, and then they factor all those different criteria in kind of a life scale point system, and then they typically formulate a reasonable bond. Mm-hmm. But what we see, it's even though it's supposed to be tailored to the individual, it's typically a range pursuant to the offense. you'll see DUIs, certain offenses, bond and ag assaults, whatever. Like when I look at a warrant, when someone calls me, when the bond is jacked up, that tells me, Houston, there's a problem, because that means the magistrate has looked at this.
And proponents say, hey, you know what? For these lesser crimes, you're keeping the jails from being overcrowded.
But here's the thing that I
But he
don't-
wants to say, but.
But they're gonna be overcrowded anyway, and our numbers will continue to grow, but that's part of what we have to deal with, and obviously, I think you had mentioned about the magistrates are every 4 hours. We've kind of gotten to the point of where those magistrates are seeing people as they come in, so hopefully that will help get some of those through the process a little bit quicker as well.
And you know, the other when you're debating this public policy decision, I think the president in his executive order is concerned with people in D.C. and other places that just have to sign a piece of paper and promise to show up, and it's a revolving door, and then they keep committing carjackings, burglaries,
I mean, this
home
has been going
invasions.
on in D.C. since 1992.
Right. So the fact that you have money can maybe help the situation and be a deterrent, but it may not, because the difference between paying 10% or being on pretrial release and keeping 10% of a $100,000 bond in your pocket may or may not deter future recidivism while they're out, et cetera.
I mean, do we know the impact on crime? Do we have stats?
We do limited stats in Tennessee. They're not as onerous as one would think. For example, in Memphis, Shelby County, the largest county in the state of Tennessee, they recently did a study, and 12% of all criminal offenses in Shelby County from September of 2021 to March 23 were committed by people out on bond. But now, so it doesn't shock the conscience. But now here's what also is significant. If you commit an offense while you're out on bond or you're on probation, when you're convicted, those charges are stacked. So instead of running concurrent as an option, those are going to be stacked on whatever charges that are the underlying offenses. But to me, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, Sheriff, just paying a bondsperson 10% of an arbitrary number, I don't think ensures that they're going to have good behavior versus pretrial release.
It doesn't ensure it, but what it does is, to that bondsperson, that guarantees that individual, they're guaranteed that individual will show up to court, and if not, then they're responsible for it, and not us, and they have to go find those people.
I have a question, and this goes back to the president. Obviously, he heads up the executive branch of government, of the federal government. So how can he stop? How does he have the power to stop cashless bail?
Well, what he does, it's always the chicken and the egg. Everyone goes, how come the drinking age, it used to be 18, is now 21%? Well, what we did a few decades ago was tie federal highway funding to having the drinking age at a certain level to cut down on serious wrecks, DUIs, et cetera. So what you do, and President Trump in his executive orders commissioned Attorney General Pam Bondi to find ways to manipulate funding, cut off funding for jurisdictions that have cashless bond. But I don't know that it's a cashless bond versus pretrial release issue, or more scrutiny and oversight. For example, Knox County does a tremendous job. Sheriff Spangler's over pretrial release. I mean, how many people are on GPS?
I got right at 200.
200. I mean, there is significant levels of pretrial release, and if you violate, they will file a motion to increase and revoke your bond, and they are extremely vigilant.
And we want to take a moment and remind you all, you are free to comment or ask questions. Here's your chance to ask the question of the sheriff of Knox County and our defense attorney here on this issue. So please go ahead. We've had a lot of folks weighing in the past. So go ahead if you have some questions on this. Now is your chance to ask them. And a lot of people have been asking in the newsroom, what's the difference between pretrial release and released on your own recognizance? Is that one and the
Sheriff can
same?
address this. One, ROR, releasing your own recognizance, you typically don't have to report to pretrial.
Correct.
Pretrial releases within 3 days, you have to have your rear end over to the pretrial office.
That's right.
And then and if not, he comes and gets you. We'll personally knock on your door, and we'll give you a nice ride and an air-conditioned, yes, Crown Vic to where you need to be. But that's kind of the difference that you see. But again, to me, the overwhelming issue, and I think the public debate, and crime has become such a hot-button topic. And Tennessee has wrestled with the issue of bail, and we're getting ready to wrestle with it again with a proposed constitutional amendment.
Right.
But, a lot of John Q. public thinks that if you are accused of a serious offense, that you shouldn't have a bail. You shouldn't have a bond. Because we see these people that are out on bond, habitual drunk drivers, whatever, commit another act, senseless act, time and time again. But that's a slippery slope. But, Lori, the proposed constitutional amendment would deny bond and make it more difficult for 72 serious offenses that are 85%, such as vehicular homicide, rape of minors, child, other serious felonies. But imagine that if we put that number of people in the detention facility, if we flipped a switch tomorrow and we quit providing bond in 72 categories of serious offenses, I don't think you could hold them, could you?
Well, obviously, we talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
You probably have to build more jails, but the thing about that too is I think it becomes a deterrent as well hopefully for other people. That's the way we look at it anyway, and say, well, you commit that crime, guess what? You're going to stay in jail, and for some people, that is a deterrent. For others, it's not. So, go back to what you said.
Well, and the sheriff just hit the issue, framed the issue squarely. And the issue, do you use bond as a constitutional right to reasonably ensure someone's appearance for court and to protect the public? Or do you use it as a general deterrent, and that is, if you commit this offense, you're going to stay in jail?
It depends on who it is.
It is. It's an individual decision. So, yeah.
And all of this has become political debate, part of the president's crime reform.
No, it's
package,
law
if you
enforcement
will.
and defense attorney. That's
Well, yeah. But,
Well,
you know,
we have a catch and
seriously-
release program.
Oh, there
That's
you
what
go.
we catch.
But it's part of the whole crime reform
Right.
package. Where do you stand on National Guard troops being sent to different areas?
my opinion is that if they're helping, then by all means, I think it's helping them right now. So obviously I don't live there, so I can't tell you about the crime, but what you see on TV, and it's what we have to go by, and the reports that are made, that some of the people that are saying that I'm glad they're here and they're helping, and I mean, if they've made over 1,000 more arrests, then what's been going on?
And that's interesting. I think the sheriff's got a great point. And you hear pundits just going, "Well, there were only 1,000 arrests." Well, I mean, that's a lot of arrests.
That's a significant number.
It's a significant number. But again, that's kind of this overwhelming debate. Now, you got a macro view, as Sheriff Spangler kind of articulated, and that's general deterrence. We don't want recidivism while someone's out on bond. But then again, I mean, I'm in the business of not guilty. And when you have a citizen accused that has his day in court and he is not convicted, or the law enforcement, the district attorney's office look at things and say this case needs to be reduced, dismissed, probation, what do you do with the person that spent 9 months in jail waiting to get the day in court to prove their innocence? So it's a tough hurdle, and I think it's like anything else we see in the current climate. You let the pendulum swing so far when you let too many people out of jail repeatedly, then everybody pays the price. But if you look at it on a case-by-case basis, it really isn't hard. Well, that's a gross overstatement.
Again, it goes to the risk
It
assessment.
shouldn't be hard to identify the habitual risk. Would you not
Easy for
agree?
us to say.
Yeah, sure.
Do we see the same people over?
It is a
and-
revolving
we
door,
have
and
some
it
of
has
those.
been for years.
And if we knew how to fix it, it had already been fixed.
Yeah. On that note, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
We have a heartbreaking mass tragedy to talk about. We'll bring you up to date on that mass shooting in Minneapolis coming up in just a moment. All right, welcome back, everyone. Before we get to the tragic mass shooting in Minneapolis, we do have one question from someone who's been with us on our live stream. ZZ DeCoco, thank you for being with us. Here's the question: does Tennessee have a minimum standard for setting bail?
CZ, the sheriff can speak to this also. No, it's typically a reasonable bail or bond, and it just kind of over the years has kind of worked in terms of what misdemeanors are, serious felonies. But you're there every day watching those magistrates. How do you think they come up with those numbers, Sheriff?
There's a combination of things. You look at your background, your history, those things like that. Can you make bail? Can you what's your job? So that's some of the things that come into play. It's not just one thing. So there's not really a standard, if you will.
All right. And Tennessee in 2024 did pass a law that prohibits judges from considering a person's income, right, when talking about bail.
Well, it's just like whenever an indigent person, they do that in the courtroom whenever
Yeah.
they say, well, I can't afford an attorney.
All right, there you go. Thank you for being with us and for asking that question. Now to bring you up to date on today's mass shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic school. It happened first thing this morning. School had been in session for 3 days. An 8 and 10-year-old were shot and killed, 17 others injured. The gunman then turned the gun on himself. He's just been identified. He's only in his 20s. Police say that this is a well-thought-out, planned attack, that he walked up and shot through the windows of the sanctuary as Mass was going on, aiming at the children. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. And, you see the national coverage of this, and we think about it, and we think, well, here we go again.
Yeah.
Here we go again. It's the latest.
There's just no words for it. There's no words to describe the terror and the assault and things like that. And people say, what about law enforcement? What are you doing for things like that? Those are things, unless we have information from other people and or history on somebody, we don't know. We respond. And it's just like I'll go back to a traffic stop. If an officer is shot at, he is reacting to somebody's actions, which makes our reactions slower. But somebody that is determined to do something like that, they're going to at least do something. And then, as he said, then he took his own life, which, as far as I'm concerned, he's a coward. But with that said, it's just nobody thinks it's going to happen to their community, and that's why we have to keep a vigil on it.
Yeah, this guy did not have a criminal history of any. They can't find a lengthy criminal history. We don't know any of the details just yet.
Yeah. It's a terrible, as the sheriff said, terrible, horrific, senseless tragedy. But it also, I think Tom makes a good point. Unless you have some intel, you can't predict where something like this is going to happen. But that reminds me, and Sheriff Spangler did a great job when we had the epidemic of school shooting hoaxes and threats. This sheriff's office came out and said, hey, parents and kids, we're going to treat this seriously. It's a felony because you got to evacuate the schools. So just know, when you see the corollary between jokes, pranks, threats, and you see the reaction, which is excellent here in Knox County, that's the reason. Would you agree?
Yes, totally.
When you look at the profiles of some of these people, and granted, we don't know anything about this guy as yet, other than in his early 20s, according to the police chief, did not have an extensive known criminal history, as I said, acted alone. They did not release any other information. Where do you start with that? What happens next in the investigation? I would think you'd try to find his car.
Oh yeah. Well, you want to know where he lives, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much where you'll start, and then that'll lead you back to that vehicle and what have you. But there'll be an extensive investigation that's going to start. I'm sure it's already started by now. Yeah. But yeah, it's they're going to look into everything. They're going to turn every stone over just to find out what his motive, if there was a motive, or did he have a mental health issue, whatever it may be.
Going back to what you said, Greg, I remember that news conference and your face when you said, we're not messing around. We are not doing this.
I was a little upset.
Well, rightfully so. And I think parents reacted to that and said, listen, he's not taking this lightly at all. We've had threats. At the hoaxes at UT Chattanooga, other university campuses, and now the real thing happens. Reiterate that message to people who are watching right now.
You make a threat like that, a false statement, we're coming after you. We're not playing games with this anymore. When you put all the lives of the kids that are in our schools, when you put them in danger, you put the officers that are responding in danger. There's so much going on. We're not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm going to make sure that, and we've gotten with the juvenile judge, we're going to bring you in. We're going to take you to juvenile, and whatever happens, happens. But parents, if we could do something with you, especially if you knew something and you didn't let us know, then obviously I know you want to protect your child, but yeah, we're serious about it.
That level of accountability.
They are,
well.
and and the juvenile court here does an excellent job of vetting and finding out what was said in jest and what was
Yes.
a danger. So it is a very workable process that the system works with counseling, risk assessments to determine what's in the best interest of the child. But another, when all these issues come together, thing that really places people in tremendous danger is swatting,
Yes.
where you see people, and I won't mention the name of one of my good friends, it's an elected official, that got swatted, where they make false 911 emergency calls, and you roll up all these law enforcement people, fake bomb threats at UT, someone is going to get hurt.
Absolutely.
Because you guys show up in guns and you think there's a situation that's not there. The innocent homeowner has no idea what the noise and the ruckus is outside. But that's another situation that, when we see these school shooting tragedies, they're horrific, they're senseless. But those are dealt with severely. But, the people that do the hoaxes, the swatting is something that you just need to realize legally there is a significant amount of enforcement, accountability, and these are reasons why.
Yes.
And you'll be found.
Yes.
Yes.
Most definitely.
All right. Hope, our digital producer over here in the wings, tell us how much time we have left.
About 5 minutes.
We have about 5 minutes left. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I just mentioned to Sheriff Spangler, we would be remiss as journalists if we didn't bring this up while we have you here. We had asked you here before this came out today, but this was breaking news earlier today. The former head of Knox County Sheriff's Office Narcotics Unit, David Henderson, who's been in the news for years, pleaded guilty now to conspiracy to commit federal program fraud, siphoning money from the KCSO cash fund and a credit card for his personal use, buying a ton of Apple products and all other kinds of things. Finally, maybe putting an end to this case. So what can you say about this case?
I'm not going to say much other than there is a plea deal that is there, and going to wait on the sentencing to see if that plea deal is final, and they'll sign off on it. And as soon as it is, then what I plan on doing is getting with the U.S. Attorney General's office to see if I can talk to the FBI, and I want to know the investigation, what type of investigation went on, and are there people still there that are involved in this, because it lists other co-conspirators.
And this was before your time in the sheriff's seat.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Okay. Would you like to add to this?
Not specifically, but I will say this. Having worked with Sheriff Spangler, a lot of law enforcement, when you see something like this, it's unfortunate.
It's a black eye. I mean, it's
black
two
eye.
black eyes.
But it is not as frequent as the public thinks.
No,
it's
it's not.
rare. When you look at how many employees do you have, Sheriff?
A little over 1,000.
1,000 employees. So this is an aberration.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment specifically about Henderson, but
Sure.
but to me the takeaway too is when you have one Henderson, think of all the other
Good people.
Yeah, 999 or 1,999 people you
Exactly.
don't have.
The co-conspirators are listed We haven't seen specific names
No.
in some of these cases, but we have had some people call and ask whether a former sheriff who's running again should withdraw.
That's his decision.
Yeah. All right. We will leave it at that. We've got 1 minute to go. We just wanted to make sure we talked about this. And like you said, this does give the sheriff's office a black eye. And in terms of trying to have a good relationship with the community and have that trust, working toward that, especially since this was the former head of the narcotics unit, that's a big job.
And the buck stops with me. The buck stops with the sheriff, and you want to make sure that those things are covered. And I think there was a question asked from us about how does KCSO prevent something like this from
Just
happening.
came in.
It's by auditing, and that's what I did whenever I come in office. Was I wanted an audit done on things, and did it show those things specifically at the time? Evidently not. But come September 1 of 2018. It was noticed that things stopped during that investigation.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for addressing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're glad you're with us, and we're glad you're with us today for our live stream. We're going to talk more about this coming at 5:30. We're going to stick to cashless bail. I know you don't like that term.
Pretrial release.
We will talk about it more at 5:30. Thanks, everyone.